Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here. The show, as always, presented by FanDuel, and we've got a lot to talk about tonight after a quality showing from JJ McCarthy in a decided victory over the Washington Commanders. I spent a good portion of the day today watching back McCarthy every throw, and the offense and defense just got a bunch of takeaways from both sides of the ball. But of course, we're going to spend a lot of time focused on McCarthy's performance. How good was it really, along with what it means going forward into these next couple of games, and the big question of, did they make some mistakes in the past with how they handled JJ McCarthy, and did they find answers, or was it really just the Washington Commanders? I would love your guys' thoughts. I want to take a lot of those as well. And in 1 hour, Brian Murphy will join. No Manny Hill tonight for a roundtable, but Murph will be here, and we're going to go back and forth on this as well. But I would love your thoughts, and really connects to the FanDuel question of the day today, which is the Cowboys opened up against the Vikings for next week. 6.5-point favorites Dallas is in that game. Did the Vikings' performance against Washington make you think they can beat Dallas? And here's the main question: what does JJ McCarthy have to do to convince you he should be the guy next year? What does he have to do to convince you in these next 4 games, or can it not be done? Let me know in the comments. I will get to your thoughts momentarily, but I got a bunch of notes that I'm going to run through here with JJ McCarthy, and then I'll give final thoughts, and we can have a good discussion. So let's just begin with this. The game plan, I felt like, was one of the best of the year. And yeah, the results certainly showed that, but one of the best of the year versus what they were facing and what they're working with. It actually made me think a lot about what happened in London against the Cleveland Browns, and how Kevin O'Connell worked to the strengths of Carson Wentz throughout that game. It was kind of a back and forth bloodbath at times. It was ugly. There was a lot of running. There was a lot of short passing, and they were doing that to mitigate what Cleveland had defensively in terms of their ability to create pressure. Well, this wasn't the same game plan, but it was in the same vein of working really strongly to the strengths of the quarterback, where in that game, Wentz was doing a good job of getting rid of the ball quickly, and eventually it kind of broke through in that final drive. And in this game, JJ McCarthy was getting rid of the ball a lot faster than in the past. His average throw was 2.56 seconds, which is his fastest of the year. And I thought a very positive sign for just how he was seeing the field, because there's only 2 ways that I guess there's 3 ways that you end up with a slow time to throw. Number 1 is that you're scrambling all over the place. So that's Caleb Williams. Number 2 would be the Sam Darnold way, which is you are willing to stand in the pocket for a very long time to see if things develop and take a lot of hits. And that's what Darnold did last year. Or number 3 is you're not really seeing it. You're kind of panicking. You're fidgeting around in the pocket, looking, and then making mistakes, which is often what was happening with JJ McCarthy. He does scramble, but there was way too much of that early in his first number of starts, and he was taking a lot of hits because of it. He was late on throws because of it. He was not late with his timing very often in this game. There were a couple things that we'll talk about with the pocket presence that I noticed, but for the most part, he threw in a very timely fashion. And the reason for that is that a lot of the concepts that they were using presented themselves very clearly. So let me give you a good example of playing to not only being able to see it very clearly for JJ McCarthy and be decisive, but also working to his actual way he throws the football. So this is something that we've talked about, KOC has talked about time and time again, about how JJ McCarthy is developing his touch, right? And learning to layer the football. Well, in this game, they didn't ask him to layer the football pretty much ever. It was really just to drive the football, and they used a lot of concepts where if you throw it 100 miles an hour, you're probably going to be fine. And I'll give you the example right here, which is the first touchdown to Josh Oliver is a vertical concept from Oliver, who's lined up as the either in line or in the slot. I can't remember. I think he was in line tight end. And the Commanders are running a very clear cover 3, which they did not have any deceptiveness whatsoever really in this game. And we'll get to that part of it. But you could see it. It's a single high safety. Dan Quinn is known for this. He comes from the Seattle Seahawks school of that cover 3 that they had so much success with there, but maybe has gone out of vogue. Teams still use it, but not like all the time like Seattle did. So you can see it before the snap. It's a single high safety, which means if you have 2 tight ends running vertical up the seams, there's a good chance that that guy's going to be open. So McCarthy drops back, and as soon as the nickel defender goes into the flat, it means, yep, it's cover 3. It's exactly what you thought it was going to be. And he throws the heck out of the ball. It's an absolute rocket. It's probably 8 feet off the ground the whole way. Whew, and it just sticks right to Josh Oliver, and he goes in for a touchdown. Now, that is a perfect type of situation for JJ McCarthy in the way he's throwing the ball, which is to fire it up the seam to a guy where there's not a linebacker in the way. You're not too concerned about layering or putting it over someone. It's into a window that he can just stick it on his guy. And he did exactly that. He led him perfectly into the throw. It was on time. It was back foot, step up and fire. And that's what you're looking for McCarthy. And that's a good example of having a really good play call versus that defense. And it's not because a lot of folks were connecting simple to short. And when you look at McCarthy's numbers throwing short this year, it hasn't really been all that successful. And one of the issues is not being able to put so much touch on the football. And a lot of the short game is timing, and it is taking the velocity off of it. Like, you can't have a guy running 5 feet in front of you and then rip it to him like he did, a couple games ago to Aaron Jones. And we all went, well, that's a drop. Yes, it is a drop, but also it's hard to catch the ball when the quarterback throws it that hard and you're standing from, across the room to somebody. So there wasn't a lot of those throws in this game. A lot of them were in the intermediate areas, which is where JJ McCarthy really thrived in college. If you look at his numbers in Michigan, where he was hitting on a lot of his high percentage stuff was between 10 and 20 yards. So this throw is a good example of drop back, hit the back foot, let it rip through a window, and then bang, you get Josh Oliver for a touchdown. There were a few others that stuck out to me for similar reasons, and they were ones where, and this is where McCarthy, he really does have a very strong arm, where he's in the pocket on the right hash, but the throw is going deep out to the left 2 different times to Jordan Addison, where he drops back and again doesn't have to put it up over anyone, just throws it into what Kevin O'Connell calls a void, where defensively the Commanders were playing way back. I mean, way back. So Addison is running straight up and they are just falling way back. They do not want to get beat over the top, and then breaks out toward the sideline. He's got a ton of room because it's on the right hash, so the left side of the field, and breaks it off. And McCarthy is able to throw it all the way across with a ton of velocity on it, and twice hit him on those throws. One, he had to lead him back a little bit. It was very accurate. And then there was another one that was just a smoked football to the sideline where he caught it and didn't even have to come back for it. Both excellent throws. And something to keep in mind with both of these throws and the vertical one for a touchdown were that McCarthy had absolutely terrific pass protection in this game. There's 1 or 2 times where Will Fries gets beat. I'm not sure anybody else got beat on this day. I mean, more than once. And Christian Darrisaw was as dominant as you will ever see Christian Darrisaw in pass protection. He was outstanding. Donovan Jackson, who was playing through an ankle injury, did a terrific job. Those two worked together really well. At one point, McCarthy drops back to throw, and I think it's the deep out to Addison, the second one that went for maybe 25 yards, where they're trying to run a stunt, and Darrisaw just shoves one guy into the other guy and knocks them both out of the play. And McCarthy has all day to just step up and throw perfectly to Jordan Addison, can see everything. And I think when you can give any quarterback a pocket like that, then they're going to have a great chance to have a lot of success. And for a lot of these games, McCarthy has not had that. You've had different guys coming in and out in the Packers game. Darisaw leaves, Jackson leaves. You got Brandel and Justin School. And earlier this year, we talked a lot about that Atlanta game where you've got backup linemen coming in. And the difference between this line, and I also want to shout out Ryan Kelly. I mean, just a absolutely phenomenal performance. Ryan Kelly was exceptional in this game. He was sticking guys. He was dealing with any sort of stunts, twists, blitzes, just taking them out. He's a great player. You could see why the Vikings wanted him to work with JJ McCarthy. And this five, and this is why when we talk about, well, it's this person's fault, it's that person's fault, and so forth, the roster as we saw it yesterday was a very, very good roster. And it was also healthy. It's got to be one of the healthiest rosters in the league now when it was one of the most injured rosters in the league early in the season. This is what the offensive line was supposed to look like. And McCarthy's got all day back there to work and get rid of the football. So that really, really helped him finding those lanes. There were also some really, really well drawn up plays. I'll give you an example. On the 98-yard drive, they ran a play where Justin Jefferson looks like he's going to have a little screen pass into the flat, that's his route. And it ends up where he goes and looks like he's going to stop for the screen. And then he just runs into the middle of the field while everybody else goes and blocks. It's a very clever design by Kevin O'Connell, and it got them a first down. The throw was a little bit on the high side, but it was a really well played design because it looks like, all right, one person's got to have Jefferson on that little screen pass on their defense. And then suddenly he's going into space. Hawkinson's blocking. CJ Ham is blocking. They get a first down there. Jordan Addison's blocking on the backside. And they just end up with a very nice play to set them up. And then on the touchdown, the second touchdown to Josh Oliver, he's blocking the entire way. They send a deep cross with Jefferson and Addison, and then he just sneaks out into the flat. He's right there. It's as easy as pie for JJ McCarthy. And that was kind of the story of the day, is that there wasn't really a lot that JJ McCarthy faced that was challenging. He didn't face a lot of pressure. Their blitzes were pretty well picked up by the Vikings time and time again. They did blitz maybe more than I thought they did, but the reason I didn't think in real time that they blitzed that many times is because they weren't getting home with it. They weren't causing confusion with it. So everything was kind of picked up. I thought that there was less going on before the snap, and this might be just confirmation bias, right? Like we heard all last week, and Kevin O'Connell made a comment today about how, oh, if it was simple, I wouldn't be in my office all night long or whatever, something like that. It's like, no one said that you needed to have a high school offense. And no one expected that. They expected an NFL offense. We all did, but maybe just a little less in terms of moving parts, which was how Wes Phillips had described it last week. Maybe a little bit less in terms of all sorts of different formations and multiple motions and shifts and things like that before the snap. To simplify it, there were plays in this game where no one motioned at all. They just lined up, they ran their concepts, and there was a completion early in that 98-yard drive where nobody motioned. They lined up and they just ran their concepts, and somebody was open and he completed a pass. And there were other times where maybe one guy was motioning and that was it. And then they just got it off and they went from there. That may have been some of the simplification. I mean, it's hard to know because I don't think that O'Connell loved the word simplification, and Aaron Jones couldn't think of another way to put it other than dumbing down. But maybe in a different way of phrasing would just be that they took some of the fat off of all of this and kind of got down to brass tacks with the offense and focused on some of the things that JJ McCarthy has done best and tried to create the windows for him where he could just let it rip. And they weren't saying, oh, all you've got to do is layer it over this linebacker perfectly and guide it into your wide receiver. How about you just throw it as hard as you can, like 20 yards, and that guy will be there and he'll make a play. And they were able to do that. So there were times in this game where I was pretty shocked at what Washington did not do. Pretty shocked that they didn't rotate defenses. They were easy to read. I thought, man, I mean, if you even know a little bit about coverages, you can identify all of this stuff before the snap. And I sent a message to my friend Cody Alexander, who runs Match Quarters, to me, a brilliant defensive mind. And I said, am I crazy, or do I think that any quarterback could read these pre-snap things? Like, why wasn't there any deception from the Commanders? And he said, no, you're not crazy. That he said that their game plan last week was much better against Bo Nix than it was against JJ McCarthy, which I found interesting. But one of the issues was for the Commanders is they were getting run on. And this is where the Vikings deserve a lot of credit as well. Their offensive line in the run game, both running backs were just outstanding. And if you can pound away at the run, wear down the opposing defense, these are things they have not been able to do. And then have a play set up for McCarthy on third down. All right, well, here's all you have to do is complete this pass. And third down's not the easiest, but like complete a couple of third down passes and you've got a whole drive for yourself, or scramble one time and you've got a whole drive for yourself. That is easier than saying, hey, you got to bring us back in a game down by 2 touchdowns to Baltimore, or down by 10 points or whatever it was to Green Bay. How many points was it to Green Bay? Was it 10 points to Green Bay? How many ever points it was? It was 17-6, maybe 11 points to Green Bay. Hey, now it's all in your hands to bring us back. Throw from the shotgun. Maybe not exactly what you're looking for there. So circumstances, run game, a Washington defense that is super, super limited. And some of their coverage stuff was just odd. I mean, you have one play where Addison is the lone receiver on one side of the field. They blitz and they've got 2 guys covering Addison, but the outside guy doesn't cover the boundary. And he just runs an out route on one guy like it was one-on-one, and he gets a big completion. You're like, Commanders, what are we doing here? Like the details were not exactly very good from a defense that is giving up a QB rating over 108 for the season, which is insane. They're basically turning every quarterback into the best quarterback in the league, which I think we could see a lot of that. So what does this kind of bring us to? Some conclusions here about JJ McCarthy versus the Commanders. I was texting with Manny earlier today, and he said, you know what it looked like was the preseason game that he played against the Raiders. I was like, yeah, except for, he didn't have any turnover-worthy plays. Oh, which I wanted to mention, 0 turnover-worthy plays by PFF, 2 big-time throws, but the 0 turnover-worthy plays is really, really big. It's the first time in his career where he has not had a turnover-worthy play. And I forgot to also get to kind of the one critique that I would have, which is in the pocket, there were a few times where you just needed better management of the pocket, where he drops back and there's a check down there. You could just kind of fling it out to Jordan Mason on one play. There was a downfield option for Josh Oliver. You could see it on tape way better than when you're down on the field, but the check down is right there. There's a little bit of pressure coming and he just waits and then tries to run away. And as he's running away, there's nothing. And he instead takes a sack rather than throwing it away. Like, he's got lots of room to throw the ball away and then just runs out of bounds and doesn't quite take a hit, but it was really close to him taking a hit. There were a few things like that where you thought, this is young quarterback stuff still, with maybe trying a little too hard to make a play, maybe putting yourself in a little bit more danger. There's another, he also is still trying to understand what open is in the NFL. And this sort of speaks to his lack of experience, where TJ Hawkinson is running a little out and in, or sort of, really just kind of a turnaround type of route. And it's maybe 8 yards away from him, takes the snap. He's looking at Hawkinson. He's got him there out of his break, but he waits, and then the defender closes in, and then he kind of panics and just hurls the ball toward Justin Jefferson. It goes out of bounds, incomplete. Now, it's not a travesty. That's not bad. He threw a ball that wasn't going to get picked off. And if anyone was going to catch it, it was Jefferson. It was sort of a him or nobody type of throw. But he threw it off balance, not on time very well, because he didn't really identify that coming out of his break, if you put the ball right on TJ Hockenson, it's a free 8 yards. This is what Kirk Cousins was really awesome at getting with TJ Hockenson was you drop back as soon as he's out of his break, stick it on him, and there you go. I also wanted to highlight the play in the end zone from Hockenson, or the one that ends up in the end zone. He threw it 1 yard short and then he pounds it in. Kind of the Commanders ran into each other there, but still a touchdown. Where it's a nice detail from Kevin O'Connell that Justin Jefferson has an outside release on a fade, and that takes the defender away from TJ Hockenson where he's going to catch it. But the biggest thing is, I think O'Connell said that the first option is to throw the fade to Jefferson. We all know, I think by now, throwing fades is not the best statistically. Like, that's been gone over a million times by the analytics people. But McCarthy saw the look that Frankie Louvu was a little late on Hockenson, and he made him late with his eyes. You can actually see him do it on the tape where he's kind of focused on the middle of the field and then turns to throw. Not like a no look, but just a hold the defender with your eyes and then throw. Nice little detail. And he makes it really quickly. And I think that was the biggest thing for JJ McCarthy, is that it felt like he was playing fast for the first time really ever. Even when he had the comeback against Chicago, there were still some plays where you're like, come on. And the same goes for Detroit, where early on there were some plays that were in rhythm, and then it was like, come on, get rid of the football. This one felt like 4 quarters of playing in a timely fashion with strong decision-making and getting rid of the football quickly and not turning it over or putting it in harm's way. That to me is progress. So this brings us to sort of the conclusion. The conclusion is Washington should be ashamed of themselves, number one. I mean, that is as pathetic of a defense as I can ever remember, but then another team gave up like 400 yards to Shedeur Sanders in the same day. So I don't know. Like, when it's bad, it's really bad on defense in the NFL these days. But no offense to Shedeur Sanders. It seemed like he played well. I wouldn't have taken him off the field for overtime. That was insane, Kevin Stefanski. But the point on McCarthy playing against this team, it was a stunningly simplistic game plan against him. Maybe they thought, oh, this kid's bad, we'll just line up and he'll throw us the ball. I really don't know. Their blitzes didn't get home. Their defenders did not win any one-on-ones. Their coverage was horrendous. They played in the parking lot way off and gave tons of opportunities for JJ McCarthy to complete passes to wide open wide receivers with clean pockets. However, so that's just the facts of the matter. However, all of this stuff is really nice progress for JJ McCarthy coming back from a low moment in Green Bay, from getting really whooped by one of the true best defenses in the NFL in the Green Bay Packers, missing a week against the Seattle Seahawks, coming back and really needing to get back to playing the way that he expected to play. And the funny thing that I thought was, I got so many questions over the last couple of weeks where people said, what was it that you guys thought you saw in training camp? And what I wanted to say yesterday was, that's what we saw. That was what we saw. That's what it looked like. Not perfect, and a few throws where you went, what happened there? And a few times where he was waiting too long, but that's what it looked like. It looked decisive. It looked like, unspectacular at times, but also some really strong throws at times and great athleticism and good decision-making. And then, against, I think, some of the more complex defenses, and when they can create pressure, it is either sped him up or slowed him down or got him over anxious, or he makes a mistake and feels like everybody's watching. I think we were all waiting to see if the Boo Birds would come out if they struggled, but then they never struggled, so the Boo Birds never arrived. But they might have, because early in that game, everybody was on edge in that building. It was the quietest I think I have heard it in a really long time. Last time I could think would be 2021 final game of the season was probably the last time I heard it that quiet to start a game. And then the crowd came along as the game was going on and as McCarthy was playing well and so forth, as the crowd will do. But I was curious about, if he makes his first mistake, takes his first sack, makes his first bad throw. Like, how's he going to respond? And it kind of never came. I mean, there was a sack or two. There were 2 sacks that added up to like -3 yards or something. It was a good get your confidence up reminder you can play in this league type of game. It was not a game that I would say that was a true test. Wow, folks, he's figured it all out. KOC finally discovered what he can do. I think that there's shreds of truth in all of that. There's nuggets of truth in all of that. Of, hey, KOC maybe realized that there's some words he could take out of the play call that'll make it a little bit faster of an operation. I didn't feel like they were in the huddle forever. I didn't feel like he was making a million checks at the line of scrimmage. It felt like they were playing faster, which is a really good thing for McCarthy in the offense. And I felt like his decision-making, that he was seeing things really well for the first time in a while. And that's a good step. And as you go to play Dallas, they're playing better, but they're not good. They just got destroyed by Detroit last week. You're going to play the Giants on the road. My gosh, the Giants, just a complete garbage team. There's opportunity here to pick up some steam, pick up some momentum, find things that work, get some confidence back for JJ McCarthy going into those final 2 games, which, if they are meaningful, will be really good tests for how far JJ McCarthy can come along. And the truth about the first 6 games is still the truth about the first 6 games. All the things that are concerning through the first 6 should still concern you. Like, how far can he get? Can he get some of this stuff? When teams are actually throwing deceptive coverages at him, when he is getting pressured, like, how is this going to respond? Is it going to be all of a sudden catastrophic mistakes again, trying too hard again? You will get down 7 points in a game, 10 points in a game, and you have to keep your composure and not just start, whipping the ball down the field, right? So I think that it was almost like having, and it's so condescending to the Commanders, but they deserve it. It was like having a joint practice in the middle of the season. That's what it looked like, which is good for him. It's exactly what he needed to get to, as he said, something, I'm paraphrasing, like a reminder that I can do this, was the way JJ had put it. And it had been a while since he had something like that. So he also acknowledged that, hey, this was way too little too late, and they have to build on it. But I think that at least something that we've gone back to time and time again has been, with young quarterbacks, you just really don't know. And history tells you that. And it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, I don't know what's going to happen here. This is not a sports world where that often is acceptable. The people who get paid the most don't ever say, I don't know. They always say, I know better than you. So I am not one of those people, but I try to be as honest as I can and base everything that I have as an opinion on data and history and what I believe about evaluation or the game or quarterbacks or whatever it might be. And what I generally believe based on the history is that 6 or 7 games are beginning to become predictive, but they're not perfectly predictive. And we're going to get somewhat of a sample size if he remains healthy through the rest of the season, but certainly not enough, and considering who they're playing, to feel on really solid ground about what JJ McCarthy is going into next season. And the fool's gold thing is very real. Like, you go back, and it's funny to use this guy now because it was always in there somewhere, but you go back, Sam Darnold, once upon a time, had this, and maybe I can find it real quick. He had this incredible run one year at the end of a season where he just went crazy for the Jets, and they thought they found their guy, but it was a really similar thing to this, where it was like the schedule. I think it was 2019. Yeah, 2019, Sam Darnold in his last week 11 through 17 had, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, numerous games with 250 plus yards with 75 or greater PFF grades, with all sorts of big time throws, 3 straight games with 3 or more big time throws. Like, that was the end of 2021, or I'm sorry, the end of 2019. But then, 2020, he has a really brutal year and ends up with 9 touchdowns and 11 interceptions at the end of the year. So like, sometimes these things can fool you in these, small sample sizes. And I think that that's also possible with these 3 games. So they're likely going to get to the end of the year and really not be sure, because I think McCarthy has shown enough flashes, and if he could put several good games together, to have the inkling that if you go forward and maybe have other things go right. And I saw my friend Jace Frederick from the Pioneer Press point out that regardless of how many wins the Vikings get for their draft status, they've already solidified a 4th place schedule for next year, which could be really important. Look at the San Francisco 49ers. They won 6 games last year. They get an easy schedule. It's helped them get back into the playoffs for this year. And the 49ers are great, but schedule is a huge deal. They had a very tough schedule this year. How many backup quarterbacks did the Vikings face this season? Is it any? Have they faced any backup quarterbacks all season long? They've faced a lot of very good quarterbacks throughout this season. That makes a difference. Early on, they had injuries. That makes a difference, as we all know. But just even who you play, having to play the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle is not an easy game. And now they're hitting a very weak point in their schedule with 3 horrendous defenses, which could shift our viewpoint of something maybe farther than it should go. So where I continue to stand is, if you guys want to ask about future quarterback options and have me grade them, I will. I'm absolutely willing to do that, because we shouldn't just throw that all off the table because it was one decent game against a truly horrific, probably the worst pass defense in the entire NFL. So I don't think that it resolves all problems or washes away anything that's happened so far, or where this organization is going to be, or, it takes pressure off people for a week. But if you lose 27-10 to Dallas, that pressure goes right back up to where it is, or where it was before they beat the Washington Commanders. So there you have it. There is the kind of total and complete analysis of JJ McCarthy's game against Washington. A reminder, if you just joined, the FanDuel question of the day is, the Cowboys opened up as 6.5 point favorites against the Vikings for Sunday. What does JJ McCarthy have to do to convince you that he should be the guy next year? And did their performance against Washington convince you that they can beat Dallas and get on a bit of a run here? So let me get to your questions, comments in about a half an hour. We will be joined by Brian Murphy, as always. Let's see. Brian says it's Washington. Let's see the last 2 games against the Lions and Packers. I mean, I agree. It's not that you can throw out these games against bad teams. The way I've always looked at this when trying to analyze what a team is when they play a bad team is, when you play a bad team, you should play better than them, consummate with how bad they are. So you were 31 points better. Like, that's a really good win for you. And what I thought yesterday was, and like, there's a lot of good players on the field right now for the Minnesota Vikings. If this roster was playing against the Atlanta Falcons in week 2, was playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers over in Dublin, maybe you get some wins there because they could block much better, because the defense is much more stout. They've really figured out how to stop the run. They've really given quarterbacks fits lately since Andrew Van Ginkel gets a big pick. He was out. Blake Cashman was out. Harrison Smith was out. Like, there's a lot of guys that were missing early in the season. Now, where they don't have an argument about that is that they were at 500 and got everybody back and then lost. And then you end up with where they stand now. So there's no excuses with that. But I was thinking about that yesterday. Just like, there's a lot of talent on the field. If you get a little better quarterback play against Chicago, a little bit better against a very flawed Baltimore team, then we're still talking about this team in the race, as opposed to, hey, maybe they could get to 7, maybe they could get to 8. But generally, I agree with you. It might depend on where those teams are at going into the end of the season. The Lions are going to play hard no matter what. But Green Bay I mean, if Green Bay has locked up the NFC North by the final week, they don't have to play anybody. They don't have to play Micah Parsons. And so we might not get too many real games against decent teams the rest of the way. So, I mean, could it be a glorified preseason for JJ McCarthy? Well, then you're talking about a lot of reps, a lot of opportunities for development, which is what you want. And if you come out of that feeling good, then you go into next year with him as your starting quarterback and competition. But there was evidence today in the National Football League of the dire situation facing football at the pro level at quarterback. Phillip Rivers, if you haven't seen this, you're going to think I'm joking, but I'm not. Phillip Rivers flew to Indianapolis to do a workout to potentially come back and play with the Colts. That's how bad quarterback play is. That their starter now, Riley Leonard, he's banged up and might not be able to play, but even then, probably going to lose. Brett Rippon is actually their backup. Yes, former Viking Brett Rippon is their practice squad quarterback. I mean, you look around the league, Daniel Jones is now out and will very likely not play at all next year. I mean, what are the options? A few people have asked me to bring up Kyler Murray. I think I need a little bit more of a deep dive for that, of how that would work, how that would even fit. I mean, my first thought is I just don't see how Kyler Murray really gels with Kevin O'Connell and what he needs to do within the system. And would he, change it up to run more with Kyler Murray? Kyler is so hit or miss. Although there was a stat yesterday that Jonathan Gannon is 13-16 with Kyler Murray and 2-11 with anybody else starting. So, Kyler's a good quarterback overall and had 1 year where he was great for about 11 games, but is he really a solution that's going to help you win the NFC North? I don't know about that. The money situation is really dicey. There's a lot of other guys that you could talk about of that guy would make a good backup, a Joe Flacco and, guys like that. Joe Flacco will have 2 or 3 good games. People be like, Joe Flacco. And then, it's not that good after that. And he ends up back on the bench or whatever. So I don't know, there's not a lot of really good options to compete with JJ McCarthy. So the best possible outcome is probably, unless you're doing something like going to get a Geno Smith, which I mentioned has kind of been my idea, if they have to have a starter. If this is the lone blip on the radar of him playing well, and then it just collapses the rest of the way, and you absolutely need a starter, that's who I would be looking at. And for a trade, the Mac Jones idea has been brought up repeatedly, but San Francisco, if I'm them, I'm like, I'm not giving you a lot because, we like having 2 good quarterbacks. Why should we give them away? I wouldn't give away Mac Jones. He's under contract. Mariota, I think, did not really make an impression yesterday on me with him coming into the game and just looking really bad. Nice interception by Harrison Smith, but terrible throw. So, that's not a viable option. They've played Mariota this whole time, and he's lost all the games. So the same thing goes for a Brissett. It's these guys seem nice to have. Oh, you just need this veteran, but it's just like Carson Wentz. They'll play fine for a little bit. People will get excited. They'll lose a bunch of games in a row, and that's kind of it, because that's what backup quarterbacks are. So you might end up more or less, unless you have a really good option or somebody trading for Kyler or, getting Geno Smith or whatever, which, Geno did win 10 games just last year. So it's not, I know that no one wants that, but, he's got the arm to make the KOC throws. There's not a lot outside of that because Daniel Jones was one of those, hey, maybe, he'll kind of fade down the stretch and they'll let him go, or the Vikings could make a bigger offer. That was tossed out there. I never saw that. I figured that they would probably just, franchise tag him or something, but now he's out with the Achilles. So now they're going to be looking for a quarterback for next year too. This league has no quarterbacks. Maybe a reason to franchise tag Sam Darnold. I don't know. We'll find out. I guess we'll see if that would have been the right move. Edwin says, can KOC stay with this game plan? That is a great question, because I don't know that you can stay with this game plan as in do it all the time against everyone, because you would need the other team to absolutely stink every week. which might happen in the next 2 weeks. So the answer is 100% yes over the next 2 weeks. And I have not been wowed by Detroit's defense either this year, even though they've got really good players. Half of them are hurt. Kelvin Shepard's done a good job at mixing things up a little bit more, but they still play a lot of straightforward man coverage stuff for McCarthy to sort through. And then, Green Bay, we'll see what kind of effort they're putting in at the end. It might be a big time effort to make it, or it might be none because they don't have to. So he may not face another team that is throwing Jeff Hafley and Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary stuff at you. It might just be all AAA teams the rest of the way. And yes, you can stick with this. And I think that there's a lot of elements that you can stick with, which is one is building off the run first, big personnel, absolutely aiming for what Seattle has done with Darnold, which is a higher efficiency, lower volume type of offense. I think if you're aiming for that, then that's the right way to go. And if you run this effectively, like I know Kevin O'Connell doesn't want to be in third down. I totally get it. Why would you? No one wants to be in third down. So running on first and second down is not something that the analytics people would often tell you to do. But sometimes you got to play to who's on the team, and you might have to only be asking McCarthy to make some big time throws on third downs, do it 3 or 4 times a game. And then the rest of the stuff is sort of laid out straightforward for you. That's what they did yesterday, and it worked. So I think that's the type of game that you want to try to play. I also will say that it wasn't wildly different than what they did against Green Bay and Chicago. They got pummeled with it in Green Bay, and he was late on a lot of throws that were right there for him because the defense was throwing a lot of deception, a lot of pressure. And it's just a different ball game when you don't get all the answers pre-snap, which is what I think Washington gave them. I thought every defense that they were putting out there was pretty straightforward to pick through. That's really helpful, and that's not what you're facing against Green Bay. But in these last couple of games, playing to strengths, limiting numbers of attempts in favor of trying to aim for high efficiency, those intermediate throws that he's comfortable with, trying to create windows where he can fire it just how he wants to throw it, not trying to teach him to layer in the middle of the season, try to work on that going into the offseason. But if your offense has to be built for him to throw into places where he can throw line drives, well, that limits what you can do. It certainly does. And it won't work against every defense, but it'll certainly work more than trying to have him do it all the time and just having him throw picks. I think that he can stay with this game plan in the coming weeks. I think it can work, but I also don't think that it's like a championship type of game plan. I think it's like a training wheels type of, like, let's get him on track game plan. Let's get him some confidence game plan. And not to take away, some of the throws are great. So it's not like it was just all the easiest stuff in the world. Playing football in the NFL is never just a walk in the park. But this was close. This was as close as it gets. So you can't generally do this over a 17-game season. But, we have seen some teams in the past, like there are versions of this. Alex Smith with the San Francisco 49ers. If you go back and watch 2011 season, how many really tough plays does Alex Smith have that year? And he was great. And they went to the NFC Championship. Bo Nix currently, how often are they really asking Bo Nix to play a ton of real straight drop back, pick through a bunch of stuff, layer of football? Not that much. That's why he averages 6.5 yards per pass attempt, because it's mostly stuff that's kind of right there in front of him. And then every once in a while, scramble and make a play. You can win games by doing it, especially if you have a defense like this. My gosh, the defense was freaking dominant. So if you could do that, then you can win all the games. If they had a defense that was crushing and they, didn't have any injuries and they had an offensive line like this and a running game every game. But the reason why QB wins do tell a story, and not always the perfect story, but they direct us in certain ways to ask, well, why are you winning that way? When certain quarterbacks like Josh Allen pull off what he did yesterday and some of the throws, you go, okay, You are winning under all circumstances with this quarterback, no matter what's happening, who's playing, what's going on, how much snow there is, how much Joe Burrow's throwing touchdowns on the other side. You could still win that football game. Or are you talking about you can only win a certain type of game? Right now, they can only win a certain type of game, and we saw it yesterday with this game plan. But he's 22, and it's his 7th game ever, so you can potentially build up to that. You can potentially take these very basic things that he's doing in a game like that at a high rate of success and grow with them. How much it can, I'm not really sure. I Shot You 99 says, can both things be true? McCarthy could be historically bad QB, but also not historically bad to play terrible against the Commanders. Yes. Well, and this is absolutely a fact that if you go back through a lot of bad quarterbacks games, there are moments, there are flashes. Like, these guys are drafted high. I mean, I'm pretty sure Ryan Leaf had like a game. Like, I mean, Jamarcus Russell had a game. This is why we don't really know, because there are quarterbacks. Carson Wentz is one of them who played, I don't know, Jaden Daniels, if he's going to not stay healthy, he might be one of them. There are quarterbacks who played really well to start and then went totally sideways. There are quarterbacks who played really bad at the start and then skyrocketed. Now, with McCarthy, the biggest concern is that in the last 10 years, still after this game, his quarterback rating is like a 67. And even if you look at the last 10 years, there's not too many guys who played like that over a 7-game stretch and ended up turning out to just magically have the light come on. This might be, I've always left the door open for this. I don't think this is just reacting to what we just saw. This might be a unique situation because of the injuries, because he did not have last year and because he missed half of this year with injuries. I mean, he sat 5 games and he's played 7. So that's a lot of stopping and starting to his career. It might be a little bit different compared to history. And most of the quarterbacks that we talk about when we go through historically, most of them that were this bad played for tanking teams, played for the Lions, Matthew Stafford, and he turned it around, or Alex Smith, the 49ers. Remember how horrific that team was when he got there? They drafted him number 1. A quarterback like this is coming into a situation that is very good. So those numbers are a little bit different. And against Chicago and Baltimore, 2 teams that use a lot of coverage deception, they blocked really well for him. And the reads weren't there, the throws weren't there. And I think there was a lot of hesitation because he wasn't seeing it pre-snap. Well, in this situation, there were a lot of his throws where he didn't have to look anywhere else. And most throws in the NFL are first or second read. So sometimes I think that's over criticism. Sometimes, well, this guy doesn't go through, or in the draft analysis world, you'll see this guy going through his progressions. I mean, that's fantastic, but you're only talking about a handful of plays a game where you really are going 1, 2, 3, 4 back to 1. It's usually a levels concept on one side of the field, and one guy goes deeper and one guy goes shorter, and you have to make a decision there. And if it's not there, you check it down, and that's most of football, right? So that's the type of stuff that they were doing really well against the Commanders. And if he continues to do that, and he does it against Dallas, and he does it against New York, and he stacks some games here, then we could walk out of this season saying, all right, 12 games, and let's say he ends up with and I like to use quarterback rating because people kind of get it. There's a lot of different metrics you could use. I just like that one because it's been used forever to sort of give a very clear snapshot of what I'm talking about. Hey, let's say he ends up with an 84 quarterback rating, 86, something like that. Well, then you're at least saying he did enough to recover from that horrific start, to gain confidence, to show that he can do a lot of things as a starting quarterback, and that you're not in a complete freak out panic in the offseason to find a starting quarterback. You're looking for more of somebody who can push him and be a little bit of competition, and who could come in if all things go completely sideways or he gets injured. I think that's what you're looking at as a best case scenario, is to build on this and play a lot of the same way. But yeah, I mean, like the facts are the facts. Through 6 games, it was historically bad. Through 7 games, it's still, even with the seventh game being really good, we're still only talking about, like 150 yards type of performance. So yeah, I mean, I think it's some to be encouraged, but not to say it's all fixed, it's all solved, it's all, perfectly fine. KFT says McCarthy was good. He has things to work on, but all the mechanics coaching gave him paralysis by self-analysis. See, I think I have a lot of trouble buying that narrative. I really do. I mean, coaches are going to coach throughout the season, and they're going to coach every position on all sorts of different stuff throughout a year. The difference, I think, is that Kevin O'Connell, and based on his comments today, I think Kevin O'Connell thought, perhaps I've said too much just throughout this season. And I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot from it about what you're looking for and how to do a lot of different things and how to coach a lot of different things. But I wonder if he felt like maybe last week, as we were all talking about, simplification, decision making, throw mechanics out the window and all that, maybe he thought, maybe I've just been a little too revealing about this because that was turned back against him, and I didn't think that was fair. You have to have mechanics to throw the ball. I mean, you have to. Yesterday, every throw that was completed, he was allowed to just whip a BB in there to a wide open guy, and you could get away with that for a game, but at the end of the day, this is the NFL. You have to throw a certain kind of way to be a winning, consistent quarterback. And Kevin O'Connell teaching that is not a thing he should stop doing, or a thing that like he screwed up by trying to work with his mechanics. And by the way, it wasn't just in the season. He's been working with him on this since day one, these messages with him. So what I don't know. I think that to me that's like trying to rewrite what happened and be like, nope, it wasn't his fault. It was KOC's fault. He overcoached him. That was the real problem. I don't think so. I don't think that he overcoached him. I don't think he paralyzed him with analysis or anything like that. I think the Ravens and the Bears and the Packers were way better in their game plans against JJ McCarthy than Washington was. And it all fell perfectly, including Washington failing on that first drive. They could play with the lead the entire time. They get a 12-play drive. But how many were even passes? 5 of them? I mean, they were able to run and run and run and then convert some third downs and get a 98-yard drive. And then you're just in the driver's seat for the rest of the game. It works really well for you. But in order to play the complete game at quarterback and win with a team that has expectations, you have to be mechanically at least close, and you should not stop teaching it. I think that his idea was, we've gotten to the final couple of games. It's going to be just sink or swim. I've done all the teaching on mechanics. There's only a couple games left. It's not like we can improve there now. So just get after it. But I'm not one to go back in time and talk about, oh, well, he must have overcoached him. Because I think that's trying a little too hard to make it, like, to take all the responsibility off of the person who was throwing those interceptions and making those mistakes. Joe says the Cowboys are playing more man-to-man coverage. It'll be a different look for McCarthy. Interesting. They also have this gentleman named Quinnen Williams, who, no matter how good you're playing as an offensive line, is a dominant player, one of the best in the NFL. They didn't have that before. And what really you want to talk about, I mean, look, he played well. So Washington wasn't physical with the Vikings wide receivers at all. It was 7-on-7 out there. I don't understand it. And you talk about the man-on-man, like, that's what a lot of teams have done against the Vikings wide receivers. Go back to Los Angeles last year, is play very physical with them. And Washington was just like, nah, we're going to play in these deep zones and just chill out back here and not give up 50-yard bombs. I don't know. Let's see. Tautest pigeon. I don't know what that means. JJ looked like a top 10 quarterback yesterday. I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I think that it was fine. I think that everything was as good as it's ever been. But when we talk about top 10 quarterbacks, to me, the top 10 quarterbacks can lead their wide receivers, can throw with touch, can deal with pressure, can make lots of different changes at the line of scrimmage, have total command of their offense. They're not throwing for 150 yards in a game like that. They're throwing for 250 or 300. I mean, that, like, what it looked like to me was a young quarterback with a young quarterback game plan who had everything really laid out for him well and took advantage of it and played well. So that's why I don't want to take away from it, but I also think we need to be realistic about what that game really was. Let's see. Harvey, I think, with a J, maybe. Or Javi. Javi? Sorry, it's little letters. Javi, maybe. Still need Mac Jones or a competitive starter for next year. That's where I'm at right now. I haven't changed that at all. One game does not change kind of the reality of where they're at, but I agree with you. I mean, I think that if that's out there, it's just finding it is the hard part. Finding who that would be is the hard part right now. First name, last name. I think even if this isn't repeatable, seeing more live game reps of something that works should hopefully give coaches ideas to build back up to the full complicated KOC offense. Yep, I agree. And I think that's why, KOC was maybe a little offended by it being called simplified, even though he said pare down the inventory, which then Wes Phillips said simplified and Aaron Jones said dumb down. And it was like, okay, well, I think we've got the idea here, but maybe it was presented by some as like, oh, now they're going to run like a really super simple offense that they should have been running all the time. It can't ever be that in the NFL. It can't ever be, hey, let's have 3 different plays that we run, and they're called A, B, and C. And we've got over on the sideline a picture of Wario, and that's like a run play. And then we've got a picture of Mario and Luigi, and that's a pass play. Like, it can't be like that. It's still going to have its own complexity, and he's still going to read and identify what he's seeing KOC, in the terms of the other team and implement some of that stuff. But I do think that when it comes to that game plan, it played really, really well to his strengths, and they need to learn from that. That's I think your point, and I agree. Drew says horrible Washington lost to terrible Denver by 1 point. I mean, Drew, I think that you're smarter than that comment, right? Like, this is Washington has given up a quarterback rating to opposing quarterbacks that would make someone an MVP. Just because they had one game that was decent against a mediocre Bo Nix does not mean that they were suddenly good. They're horrific. They had lost 7 games in a row coming in. They gave up an easy game-winning drive to Denver on that night. Bo Nix threw them the ball a couple times. That was the only thing. Come on. I think we know that. Like, who they were playing is a AAA team. That's what I called them last week, and that's what they were. One more reminder. We'll get to Brian Murphy here. We'll continue to answer your questions and comments. Of the FanDuel question of the day, the Dallas Cowboys opened as 6.5 point favorites over the Minnesota Vikings for Sunday's game. Did the Vikings' performance against Washington make you think that they can beat Dallas? And what does McCarthy have to do to convince you that he is the guy? So let me bring in Brian Murphy. We're not going to have our usual roundtable today. Manny is out, but Murph is in. So we'll get him in just a second. We'll get more answers to your thoughts there, and questions and comments continue to be welcome here for the second hour. Murph, you are now on if you can hear me. Murph, you're looking down. It doesn't seem like you can hear me. Maybe Murph can't hear me. Murph, can you hear me? Oh, hold on. Okay, Murph, you got me now? Oh,
yeah.
There you go. Okay. We're on, Murph. How are we doing? That was my bad.
Good evening.
How are we going?
I'm unmuted and good.
Okay. All right. Well, the natural discussion here for tonight is how much we make of what we saw from JJ McCarthy. And I will tell you the truth. I have been like a ping pong ball bouncing back and forth on both sides of this net, because after watching the film back, I thought, if I was Dan Quinn, I would quit because the defensive effort and performance was so poor. And at the same time, I thought McCarthy made good decisions. He made them fast and he was accurate in making those decisions. And I don't want to take away from that and pretend that that did not happen because that's what we've been looking for. So, where do you stand, my friend?
I thought it was a good, tourniquet type game. It had to happen. I mean, it was either going to be so bad, losing to a terrible team, that the building was going to erupt at the first incomplete pass that McCarthy threw or the first 3 and out that they suffered. So the fact that they actually turned that possibility on its head with a very crisp, methodical drive down the field that gave McCarthy some confidence, some uncomplicated throws to make, which he made well. The running game looked great. The offensive line, all five strong, just bullied a bad team. And I wasn't sure they were going to win, let alone roll up a 31 donut, but it was a snapshot, both defensively and offensively and McCarthy, of what might have been. I mean, if you had all of that in a Tupperware package and you can unpack that week after week, I'm guessing they could get 10 wins out of that. Alas, that's not where they're at. But it was Kevin O'Connell acknowledging where they were, both as a team and where McCarthy was as a developing quarterback, to refine his approach, simplify, dumb down, or just remove inventory, however you want to coin the phrase. They got McCarthy out of his head. They got all the gears turning nicely on a team that we thought was going to be tough in the middle, tough on the line, offensively and defensively. A 1-2 punch on the running game. You have enough players making enough plays at critical moments. Third downs were converted and not given up, and they won the turnover battle. I think that's going to be a successful formula against most teams. They wouldn't have rolled up 31 donut on Green Bay or the Rams. I think that's safe to say, but this was the right kind of performance at the absolute most critical time in the big picture. Not so much 2025, but even in the short term. I mean, that building would have been really a bad scene yesterday if you had a Seattle/Green Bay performance. And if anything, it just allows everybody to take a breath and hit the reset button, which of course we said after they won in Detroit, and which of course we said after JJ led that comeback against Chicago in week 1. It was, it was pretty ugly, but boy, look at that moxie. And it's never been consistently built upon week after week. And I think this might be the best foundation of 4-quarter play they've had.
It's certainly the best 4-quarter play that he's had, because that was part of the, I think, analysis of the Chicago win was, okay, it was a single quarter where he played well. And even with Detroit, there were some clutch moments and there was a good start to the game, but at the end of the day, he ended up with 143 yards, and it was a close game where you would expect the quarterback to be throwing a lot more successfully than that, even in a very good win overall for the team. But this game, it started out really, really well, took them on a 12-play drive where he hit some clutch passes on third down, really good stuff there. Decision-making was precise throughout the game, did not have a turnover-worthy play, gets into the end zone on 4th down on a really nice read from him and just a quick release and good eyes and feet, if you will. So there were a lot of things that I think are improvements greatly, but as you said, these things with game to game, so often we sort of treat it as the new truth when it really is just I don't know, math person, tell me what 1 divided by 7 is, but it's just a small percentage of the total picture so far and a small percentage of the total picture we're going to see. So if you go to Dallas, which is a very bad defense, and I don't think anywhere near as hard of a place to play as it once was, and you can't perform at a similar level and play. Now, Dallas is going to score, so you're going to have to play in a different game script than this. But if you can't carry it over for the next 2 weeks, and my goodness, I mean, you should go to New York and win that game by 30 easily. This should look just like it did against Washington. If it doesn't, I think that would be more telling than if it does. If it does, we're going to say, okay, those are three of the worst defenses in the NFL. I bet you wish you faced them earlier this year as opposed to Green Bay. But at the same time, we can only, we have to factor how poor those defenses are. If he struggles against bad defenses, then you're throwing your hands up and going, okay, it really was a 1 week blip against Washington.
Yeah, and it wasn't that prolific. I mean, what did he throw for 163 yards or 170? I mean, I think I texted you last night. If you could tell me which was the game that he crested 200 yards, because in his successful outings, they all are in that 150 to 180 yard range. He's found his tight ends. He found 3 of them yesterday to get into the end zone. He's not finding Jefferson, and that's going to be a lingering storyline. And I don't think it's, Jefferson runs complicated downfield routes that either McCarthy isn't seeing or is too tentative to hit. You could tell me more. You watch the all 22, but it feels like, O'Connell is putting him not in a box, but in a safe place and allowing him to gain the confidence and hit the spots that he needs in 10 to 12 yard chunks, even though Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins were routinely hitting Jefferson on 40, 50, 60 yard chunks in the air, let alone yards after catch. That's going to be another one of those. How are they going to, it's not integrating Jefferson. He's already been here. It's how are they going to link the two together? McCarthy seems to have found chemistry with Jalen Naylor and Jordan Addison. Even TJ Hawkinson's gotten more into the mix lately, but it's still lacking with Jefferson. And that's obviously for the long-term success of him and the club, that needs to be a successful marriage. So there's going to be some way, we're going to have to find ways to analyze how they're getting Jefferson open, or if he's getting open in shorter routes that McCarthy can hit him just so we can get the ball. The only time he's been able to get him in the ball is when he's hitting him on those, what do they call that, when they stack the 3 up at the line, he catches the ball behind the line of scrimmage and he seems to be attacked right away. That's happened the last couple of weeks. So he hasn't been able to get free. So that's what I really want to be paying attention to. But otherwise, is he going to be able to put together a 300-yard game? You don't want to see him throwing 45 times from behind. If they're up like they were yesterday, the running game is going to be unleashed, the ground control, the clock control, and there's not going to be a need to, take off the top of the defense. But we still need to see that from him. And I think if he can continually stack, what did he say yesterday? Stack positive plays together. You're going to see some downfield shots at a certain point. Because again, yesterday was a must win in the sense that they had to get right and had to look competent and had to be in a position where the next 4 weeks weren't necessarily a death march, but were a way to analyze and figure out who can be valuable next season. What are we going to be able to do with this payroll? What kind of competition are we going to want to bring in for McCarthy? That's what the next 4 weeks are. A loss yesterday, and we're talking about job security for a lot of people. And an ugly loss, we could have been having press conferences at some point. So at the very least, I want to see him build upon that because NFL quarterbacks do have to throw for 300 yards here and there to be successful.
Bubble screens was the
bubble
term.
Screen.
Yes,
Thank you.
The bubble screen. So this is truth but harsh from Adrian. Says praising JJ yesterday for playing mediocre says a lot about how bad he's really been. So I would not describe it as mediocre. I mean, I thought he played very well overall. I think that the sentiment is fair that even throwing 16 completions. I mean, if you look around the league, it has been a tough year for quarterbacks, but I mean, there was some performances this week. Joe Burrow, goes for 284 and 4 touchdowns. Josh Allen, 251 and 3 touchdowns. Matthew Stafford, goes 22 for 31, 281, 3 touchdowns, and a blowout win against the bad team. Sam Darnold, 20 completions, 3 touchdowns. I mean,
They've all played more than 7 games. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but the point is that it's not a breathtaking performance. I mean, I totally agree with that. But I would say that if you're looking for certain things that need to happen, the non-negotiables, as Kevin O'Connell calls them, there were a lot of those yesterday. There were smart decisions. There were throws that were not in harm's way when some things were going wrong. There were very few risks into traffic over the middle of the field. He kind of kept the ball a lot to the outsides, lots of throws that were right there, and scrambled a couple of times, made some really nice plays with his legs. His scramble, there's a nice block by CJ Ham in there. His scramble out of the end zone gets that drive going. Kevin O'Connell brought that up today, and I think that was a really nice play to use his legs. But it was all quarterback in a box stuff. I think that that's what you're talking about when you say mediocre, is like obviously the numbers and the performance, like the completion percentage, the lack of turnovers, the touchdown passes, like those are all really good. But was it like a complete, hey, this is, a back and forth game that you could have won against anybody on this day by playing quarterback like that? No, this is how you protect a young quarterback against a really bad team and basically say, don't give this game away because we're going to win it almost no matter what, with the way Washington was playing offensively. And that is a really easy place to play quarterback in the NFL. It is a very easy place to play when you have a lead and the other team cannot score and looks like it has no chance of ever scoring, which was how Washington was yesterday. But I would say, Murph, that if KOC can take anything away from this game in particular, I think it's twofold. One, maybe three. How many folds do I get? I'll give you a 3. I want 3. I'm folding 3 times. Okay.
Letter size. Sounds good.
The first fold is that you absolutely can keep running. Like there's no rules against it. There's no laws. If it's
never
working,
have been.
Keep running. If that's what your quarterback needs to put him in a position to be most confident, keep running. The other thing was that McCarthy probably won't learn the touch pass this year. So you have to create lanes and windows for him to just throw rockets. And they did that. They really used those areas of the field where he could wind up and whip it as fast as he possibly could, and it's going to reach those guys without breaking their fingers and crushing them. And I think the other part was just being able to like not have so much before the snap. That was another thing that I felt like was happening. I don't know the calls. I don't know all the checks. It didn't seem like, Murph, there were many times where he was going, change this play, change that, move that guy over there. He wasn't running an orchestra up there, which is what it looked like sometimes. It was like one guy goes in motion, they snap the ball. I thought those 3 folded things together made for KOC keep doing that the rest of the way and get the kid to learn how to play quarterback at the basic level before he has to take on the advanced level.
Which begs the question, why couldn't that have happened against Atlanta in week 2? Had that game, especially as bad as Atlanta looks. I mean, it sets a bad tone coming off the big win. Your first home game of the season, you lay an egg, and it would be a harbinger of things to come at home. And it just, you sense that these kinds of, what did you call it? Ready-made box dinner kind of performances. I mean, it's not a 5-course meal that you're enjoying at Barry's Steakhouse in Vegas or anything, Coller, for that throwback reference. I'm saying, it gets the job done. But what job are you looking for? Yesterday, they were just looking to survive and not bleed to death on the field in front of their home crowd, which is what a lot of people were looking for. I think a lot of people probably came to that game, if not hoping for it, ready for it, and they were in the right mood for it. It was kind of a subdued place. I don't know if they knew what to do with sort of a opening drive and competent quarterback play, and suddenly it's 31-0. It didn't have the vibe of this is them ragdoll. It didn't have the vibe of Cincinnati in week 3. So because of all that's been already left on the table. So I would not want to go into battle against the LA Rams in a wild card game with that performance in my back pocket, because you're going to get run out of the building. We know that. But for what they needed yesterday and for what McCarthy needs going forward, it was as good as you're probably going to get under the circumstances. We need to demand more from him. He's going to demand more from himself. O'Connell's going to demand more from him. But right now, we are at the baby step phase because there's really nothing to run for. Running toward the playoffs is over. So this is all about making sure he's making the right reads at the right time, getting the protection, gaining confidence. And now he gets to go into a week of preparation, probably a little looser, a little bit less of the weight of the world on his shoulders, healthy. I guess we came out of Monday's press conference without a surprise injury to sideline him, which is a moral victory in and of itself. So here we are, baby steps, progress. I would never settle for what we saw yesterday. I would always demand more. But at that moment, at that time, he's where he needs to be. He needed to be there a year ago or 8 weeks ago. But that's where we are. We're here now. He still only has 7 games under his belt. He still has a trajectory, or at least expectations on a trajectory that we need to hold him accountable to. This is a start back climbing out of that hole.
Car Ramrod says, am I crazy to say that if JJ had played like this all year, they'd be 8-5 or 9-4? No, you're not. But the issue is that you don't play the Commanders all year. You don't play with an instant 14-point lead all year. In order to be a complete quarterback, you have to be able to play the Atlanta game and find a way to win that game, because the defense had held on for dear life after getting steamrolled early on the ground and gave you a chance to win it. But they were sending all sorts of different blitzes. You're missing an offensive lineman, and you can make those excuses like, oh, well, that was going on and that was going on. But if you're a franchise quarterback, you still have to find ways to win. Now, there are levels to that. Every receiver dropped every pass for Patrick Mahomes last night, who played a great game and had his guys dropping passes left and right and ends up with a couple interceptions that hit people. Okay, yeah, there's levels to that, but you have to find some wins. It can't just be a perfect, like yesterday was perfect storm, perfect environment. You'll never have it easier in your life to play quarterback than that. So when those things are not there, when the team's blitzes are working, when the coverages are not super obvious and the guys are playing 50 yards off and they're actually pressing your wide receivers and, and you're not winning and you have to come back in a game. It's like we saw against Baltimore where, the game's close. Baltimore gets ahead because of a special teams mistake. You can't just go, like it's over and I'm just going to throw the ball over 50 miles over people's heads and complete 40% of my passes like that. That can't be the case, because every game doesn't just get laid out for you like that. So yes, it would be wonderful if they were able to play that way all season long. And I mean, maybe if the defense was healthier, you could have gotten a little bit more shades of that, but you usually just can't win a lot in that way in the NFL, which is why they can use these next couple of games against bad defenses to play a little bit more like that and start putting a little bit more back on, because I think that without all the details, you can't consistently win. It's a 1 week, 2 week type of solution to get him back on track, but long-term, that's not really going to work. I also do think though, that there are some lessons to be learned from what happened here that KOC could take forward with him, which is it doesn't always have to be 10 out of 10 complexity. And it doesn't always have to be throw all the time. I think there is something to that. You don't always have to have 3 different, motions, pre-snap. It's like there, you can take some of that down a notch.
Well, and another point too, to the texter or the messenger here who said 8-5 if he played that well. I would argue that if their defense had been as healthy, if their offensive line had been as healthy, and their running game as productive as it was yesterday, they could have won more with Carson Wentz too. I think there were wins to be had when he was out with his ankle sprain, regardless of how he was going to play. Wentz, at least early in London and before he got to LA, was playing well enough where they could have maybe squeezed out another win or two, or at least one more. And if they did have that one more win, then they're in the hunt graphic today, as opposed to, infantile, chance to get in. So And it's what's funny is they maybe, I don't know if they're going to run the table here. It seems unlikely. But if they get to 8-9, I posed the question in April, would you be satisfied with 8-9 if McCarthy made progress? That's still possible to happen. And I mean, they crawled over a lot of broken glass maybe to get there, but if they finish 8-9 and he's on the upswing, I think that's about what you had to expect. Unfortunately, they didn't build the roster that way and sell the product that way. They sold it as playoff bound, a deep run as possible. And that was a lemon, clearly. But it's funny. I felt that if they are going to hand this over to McCarthy, everybody needs to have the grace and patience to understand that they may end up finishing 8-9, which could make him in line to win 11 or 12 games in a year or two, because that's what quarterbacks have to go through. Management didn't feel that way, and they loaded up the roster and then decided to put McCarthy, strap it on McCarthy's back and say, carry us to January. And it obviously wasn't going to happen. He gets hurt. Wentz gets hurt. Now you're going to Max Brosmer. And we had delusions of grandeur about Max Brosmer that I think have been rightfully put down. So that's the nature of a season. And that's why looking at your schedule in April and trying to figure out what's going to happen, I think everybody would have been like, boy, that Washington game, that could be a playoff preview. That's going to be a tough matchup. And look what it turned out to be.
Isn't this why football is so tricky? Because so you make the comment about Max Brosmer, but if McCarthy was not in concussion protocol and went and played against Seattle, and it's probably going the same exact way, right? Or close. Maybe not that many interceptions.
Maybe not the underhand pass, but he was going to get abused.
Right, because their defensive line was unbelievable in that game. Also, Nick Emanware is like immediately one of the best players in the NFL. If you saw his game yesterday, I think he had a sack, a pick, a blocked field goal. Guy's a freak. He destroyed them. DeMarcus Lawrence destroyed them. And so we didn't see that. That didn't happen. So then he goes to Washington, plays well, and it's like, oh, well, he's figured some things out. Order of operations also does matter for sure, Murph, because if they had had these games, you have to wonder about this. If you had games against bad teams earlier on, if he got to play against Cincinnati, which is the other side of that coin, and then put together a few games against the NFC East and then built up his confidence, does he win the game against Chicago? Because now when the commenter says that, hey, if he had played like that, they might have won 8 games. You could definitely find that against Atlanta, and you could definitely find that against Chicago, which is a game he really threw away in a lot of ways. They outplayed them through the whole game, and I know they took the lead late, but they deserved to lose it. If the train had just stayed on the tracks and there wasn't interceptions and there wasn't big mistakes, and there wasn't ineptitude like there was in that game and inaccuracy, then they probably do have a chance based on the way their defense played, which, I really think what yesterday was, Murph, was a bit, and you wrote about this, it was just a bit of a tease of like, yes, that's how good your defense is. Yes, that's how good your offensive line is. And you blew it, because that's where I really feel like that 4-game stretch, if they had won 2 of them, at least you'd be in a spot of 6-6, now 7-6, and you wouldn't be in the playoffs, but you'd be going, okay, well, that's because the West is so good, and that's because the North is so good, but 7-6, you got a chance, to maybe finish the season with 10 wins and miss the playoffs. Well, who would be mad about that? Or 9 wins based on how it started. So
plus McCarthy's playing big games, big snaps,
right,
and big moments.
Right.
And you can't replicate that until you're in that situation.
Right. As opposed to feeling like this is a glorified preseason. And somebody had the comment, let me find it. First name, last name says, at one point, Drew Brees said, this is great for McCarthy to get reps in a game-like situation. Right. Because it was barely a game-like situation after the early part of the second half. And that's where it does become tricky to evaluate, because, there's so many quarterbacks who have had good games under situations like this that are not able to follow them from week to week. But there's also turning points that we see from young quarterbacks, which is what we wanted to be talking about, was, can we identify a moment where he got things going and started to turn around and get rolling? So that does lead me to the FanDuel question of the day for you, Murph. which is the Cowboys opened up as 6.5 point favorites on FanDuel in Dallas, a game that you will be traveling to. What does McCarthy have to do to convince you, Murph, that he is the guy over these last 4 weeks? And what I mean by the guy is not like, oh my God, he's the next Fran Tarkenton. What I mean is he is really the guy who you are absolutely starting QB1 week 1 next year. That's not a debate. They're obviously going to bring in a backup quarterback who can play some games if he needs to, but hey, he turned the corner. He's there. Like, what would he need to do in these last 4 games to get you to that spot? Or can he
look like an NFL quarterback? I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's what he needs to do. He needs to look like an NFL quarterback. I think it's foolish to think he could go turnover free the next 4 games. I think there's going to be an interception. There may be a strip sack that may or may not even be his fault. He's going to have to endure some of those. But not putting the defense on a short field, not thwarting momentum with a bad looking 3 and out after an interception puts you deep in opponent territory and you have to settle for a field goal, not seizing upon a nice kick or punt return, recognizing moments in the game to kind of ride the wave and not, short circuit that. Those are some things I'd really like to see him learn how to slide. I mean, the only times yesterday I really put my hands up with some of these were on some of those scrambles because look what happened to Jackson Dart the other day, trying to get a yard in New England, and he gets blown up on the sideline. I worry that McCarthy's trying to do too much, and he's going to get pounded again and be in a situation where he's not going to be out of the game, but he's got sore ribs. They're going to prevent him from doing this, and he's got this bothering him, and he's got that. Why? Because he tried to get an extra yard on 3rd and 12 when he ends up getting stopped short at 3rd and 6. And he didn't slide, or he didn't run out of bounds, or he didn't throw it away. So those are some things that I think maturity will handle. As I mentioned earlier, he's got to find a connection with Jefferson. And whether that's just leveraging bubble screens, whether it's getting him the ball out of the backfield, Jefferson has to get more touches and targets. And if that means O'Connell's got to, rein him in and bring him closer to the sidelines and to McCarthy to give him a better chance to find him, that has to happen. That's non-negotiable there. And I think I would just like to have a sense that he's not overwhelmed by the moment in a game or at a stadium. This is a kid that played in 100,000 seat stadiums all the time in Michigan. So I don't think Dallas is going to blow his doors off, but Dallas may put up 40 points. And if the Vikings can put up 30 with McCarthy and lose by 10, that's probably progress against a team like that in that situation. So those are the things that I would really like to see. Real quick, going back to your schedule point, it kind of triggered something in me. We have to remember too, this is the Vikings paying the price for 14 victories, right? The schedule is always weighted. So now if they end up with 6 or 7, they're going to have a softer schedule next year. So then we'll be debating about whether or not they're taking advantage of the soft schedule, even though we're not going to know what anybody looks like in May. But point being, they are going to have a less stringent schedule. They're not going overseas. The schedule should be more in their favor on paper next year, which, if anything, may make it slightly easier for McCarthy because you're not having these brutal opponents early on, even though he missed a few of those too. Washington would have been great in October, but we would have been talking all summer about how that was going to be a difficult matchup. And why didn't they have Tennessee and Jacksonville this year? Darnold had, the AFC South to punch around last year. They don't have that this year. So it is cyclical. They're going to have to ride that wave. But as I mentioned, just competent quarterback play and not being overwhelmed by the moment, integrating Jefferson and learning how to protect himself. I'll feel pretty good going into the offseason.
There's 2 things there that you said that I want to expand on. The Jefferson point. So my theory on that is that every team goes into a game against the Minnesota Vikings, even Washington, who looked like they didn't game plan at all. They are trying to stop Justin Jefferson. Now, what Kevin O'Connell has done over the last couple of years.
But is that new?
Well, this is the point. So what Kevin O'Connell has done over the last couple of years is he's devised a lot of ways to still get Jefferson open. The problem with those ways is it requires really good timing a lot of the times, because It's breaking out of a route and the ball has to arrive there. So there's a throw against Green Bay that you sort of knew, it's not going to be good today, where Jefferson goes into his break, and it actually turns into a completion. But McCarthy hesitates because it's clearly doubled, but he hesitates. And then he's like, he actually is open. And then he whips the ball in there and Jefferson kind of goes down and makes the catch. But the throw is super late because he didn't have it out and he didn't see what was happening or wasn't able to anticipate it or trust it, maybe is another part of this. So I think that with Jefferson, what he has to do is learn to trust this, but also a lot of times you do have to layer the ball. Like there's a reason people saying like, KOC overdid it by coaching him. Like, no, you have to do this. Like you cannot just throw 16 passes for 160 yards every week. Like you have to make these NFL throws at some point to get the ball to Justin Jefferson. You can't just throw him 5 bubble screens a game. It clearly doesn't work because they've already pushed their defenders toward him. Now, could you throw some quick hitches? I don't know, because they do that with Hockenson and he won't throw it. And that happened yesterday. The throws that he wants to make are the throws that he made at Michigan time and time again, which are drop back, throw it really darn hard for about like 17 yards down the field, 20 yards down the field on a deep out or a deep, in cut or vertical like he did to Oliver. Like those are his throws. You saw his strengths, but that doesn't match up with Justin Jefferson. You have to lead him to a spot. And I think even at times KOC would get frustrated with Kirk because Kirk didn't believe in it either. Darnold comes in and is like, I believe in it. Watch this throw into a, one-on-one. Also, there's another thing too. And I think getting into a rhythm is real. Jefferson, I was shocked he didn't catch that ball in the end zone. Like it's a really
I'm shocked he didn't flag for offensive pass interference, actually.
Yes, yeah, he definitely pushed the guy, but like that's a Jefferson. He hasn't made some Jefferson catches that he usually makes this year. But I agree. Like in terms of signs of true progress, that is number one for sure, is if you're really going to do it in this offense, Jefferson is the guy who's going to beat the best teams when you have to face them, not just trying to throw to your third tight end. The other thing is that I'd like to see is at least 2 times the game is hard and he wins. Like you said, like if you lose 31-28, like, all right, fine. Like that's fine. But go to Dallas, have it be hard. Have to go, back and forth with Dak Prescott a little bit. Face Green Bay at the end of the season, week 18.
They need it.
Right.
And Green Bay needs it.
Right.
Steal their thunder.
Have them play for something and grind out. I don't even need a beautiful 320-yard game. Grind out a win. Have 0 turnovers. Fight for some first downs. Make some plays. And look good. Look at least good doing it at times, right?
Fourth quarter at Soldier Field.
Right.
If you could unleash that once a game or, once a quarter.
But not against Chicago's 26th ranked defense or whatever, right? Like that's, so, I'd like to see at least a couple more times of that. We saw some good stuff against Detroit and some good stuff at Soldier Field, but that's kind of what we're holding on to. And, that's that. I wanted to ask you something. I didn't want to bring it up at the post game because I thought like, this isn't the time. It's time to break down this game and just instantly react. But there was a report in a newspaper, local paper, about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah potentially being the fall guy if things continue to go horribly wrong. Now, that talk is going to cease for a moment. I'm going to give you my opinion on this, Murph, and you could tell me what you think. I think that it's very clear the Minnesota Vikings miscalculated how far along JJ McCarthy would be and put too much on him. I'm not even talking scheme. I'm talking like pressure to be the guy when he wasn't ready for it. And they missed on that. And they have to own that. And they're responsible for it. But I also look around the roster and I go, wow, there's a lot of good players out there. And when they're healthy, it's a very, very strong roster. And you could say, well, they didn't draft well. Donovan Jackson looked great yesterday. Dallas Turner's played really well. Jordan Addison is an excellent player. They found Jalen Redmond. Like they've built a good. They traded a draft pick for Jordan Mason, who we've seen be excellent when he's allowed to touch the football. Like Hawkinson. Hey, look, weird when you get him the ball, he actually is good and fine. Like shocker, right? So that was
Better
a draft
be. He's
pick.
expensive.
Yeah, but that was a draft pick that they spent. They've done really well in free agency. Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen have greatly improved in the second half, et cetera, et cetera. But even if you went, if you lose the rest of the way and you want to fire somebody, I'm not going to stop you. But I think that they built this to have two shots at it. Shot number one has missed the mark. But if you're telling me that most of this roster goes into next year and they bring the development that they've had this year from McCarthy into next year to do it again and take another swing at it, bringing everybody back, and if they want to change an assistant coach or whatever, that's fine. But I think that that's fair. They built it all for a 2-year window. Have your 2-year window. And if it goes terribly wrong, then you can fire whoever you want. That is my take on it. How do you feel?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I was reading that yesterday too. I thought, because I think so many people were anticipating a gong show. I think they were anticipating whatever week it was, week 10, 11 in 2010. I was at the Metrodome when the Vikings got rolled by Green Bay and 60,000 people were chanting "Fire Childress." I mean, if they looked awful yesterday and McCarthy looked awful, you may have had a lot. I don't know what kind of chant you could have had for Kwesi, but I think there would have been a lot of that angst and sentiment that somebody's got to pay for this. Somebody's got to pay for the failures, the abject failure, the embarrassment, because the Wills take this seriously. Optics. Somebody would have to pay for that, but also it becomes a scenario where do you keep handing the keys to the same decision makers who have at the very least overestimated what they had in McCarthy as a 2025 franchise quarterback. That's the very least. But they also packaged and sold it to the public as this is capable of a deep playoff run team. So the disconnect there, I think the credibility gap is real. And that will only ebb and flow a little bit more over these last few games. You have mentioned the improved defensive play and the improved sort of free agent play. But there was also risks that when you're bringing in these older guys that they're going to get banged up. Ryan Kelly's concussion history was well chronicled before they signed him, and that caused problems this year. So there were decisions that were risky, and they got their chips swept off the table. That's the game of roster building in the NFL. There's only so many times though you get to, because they're playing with the Wilfs money. So there's a time where they're gonna need answers and they're gonna need accountability. You also have to measure, is it worth blowing up your front office to send a message? Is that going to help you in the short term, other than, giving the masses a body, that they can trounce on? So I'm not sure. I think the reason that was sort of in the air was a sense of this isn't just off the rails. The train's falling down the hill and destroying the town. That's where things were. So the train isn't on the tracks so much as it's not burning anymore, if we want to take that metaphor anymore. So I'm willing, because there has been, Dallas Turner seems to have turned a corner, so Kwesi, I'm going to give him a little bit more grace on that pick. But yeah, he's got to win. He's got to have a successful March and April this year, his best March and April, to put out the fires that have been raging for weeks and months because of bad decisions, or at least misguided decisions. And I don't, the other thing is, if McCarthy looked horrible and looks horrible down the stretch, then you get the infighting. Then you get your fingerprints were more on this decision in March than mine were. I told you not to go this way. So then you have that whole palace intrigue playing out, and that usually spills out publicly, and that wouldn't have been helpful. If they can avoid that, as you said, if they pitched it as a 2-year window, we purged the Spielman-Zimmer era, we purged Cousins, we even purged Darnold. We drafted this guy, he's ours, this is our regime going forward. Give us 2 years. All right. You are definitely on the clock in 2026.
And when you look at a lot of the contracts, and then there are some things that you mentioned that are realities of the NFL, that it is set up to be better the next year than you were the last. And you have to be the New York Jets to never take advantage of that. But when it comes to a good organization, just take San Francisco. They won 6 games last year. And then San Francisco has had a very easy schedule. And I remember thinking going into the season, like, I'm not sold on them. And they got early injuries. And here they are winning games because they never play anybody except for the teams in their division. And well, that's a way that and they have a great coach, not just a good coach. They have a great coach. They have a very good organization, but even they had a 6-win season where everything went wrong and their contracts look stupid and their draft, go look at their drafting. It did not go particularly well. They lost Samuel. They lost Brandon Ayuk. They've just had everything go wrong.
And they were ugly situations when they lost him.
Yes, exactly. And yet still, like, they have found a way, even with a backup quarterback playing half the season. And the way is that they've played teams like Washington a lot this year. And that's gotten them into that spot. When they've played good teams, they've mostly lost. So, although did they beat the Rams? They did beat the Rams the one time. So
they got them one more time, don't they?
They're a great organization, great coach. My point is that they've been benefiting from they were bad last year. And so if the Vikings,
but they also had the credibility of Super Bowl appearances, which the Vikings do not.
Absolutely. But like, they built this whole thing along the way to take it down, get rid of the old stuff, bring in the new stuff. They win 14 games. They add to the 14 roster to have a chance to win this year and next year. Just look at the way the contracts are set up. Most of them are, like, technically maybe not through 2026, but they really are. Also, like, these draft picks, at least the first rounders, are developing now. So you're going to get a Turner that's going into his 3rd year, a Jackson that's into his 3rd year. And I think if you fire people after the first year of your quarterback starting, that also kind of looks a little ridiculous, because historically first year starting quarterbacks don't always hit the ground running. So give them their shot with him on his rookie contract to go into free agency again, make good moves there, to draft someone, make a good move there. And I know people say, well, they can't draft, but again, look at the first round picks. I know Scene went wrong, but everyone else very much still, were up in the air on McCarthy, but that's KOC's pick. Clearly, everything else is at least trending in a good direction. Allow that. I think you don't have to fire someone there. The only argument for that would have been, I think, if all their moves had just gone terribly wrong, some have been better than others, would be, to me, if they wanted a general manager to be much more of the I am the captain now. Because what they did when they fired Rick and Mike was they said, we want a culture of collaboration. And I believe what has been happening with the Vikings is the coaching staff, Flores, KOC, they have been getting the grocery list, and the front office, Kwesi, Rob Brzezinski, they've been getting the groceries for them. Here's what we need. Go get it. We've heard lots of stories about, oh yes, this is how I got Cashman. This is how I got Van Ginkel. This is how, et cetera, right? And I think that's fine as a way of operating. But if you're going to change, you're probably going to say, all right, we are taking the command away from the coaches now, and it is the general manager's job to build the roster. It's this guy. It's this old school football guy, which is probably who they'd hire. And no longer are the coaches, maybe dictating as much roster wise. I don't see a need for that right now. What I see a need for is the quarterback to play a hell of a lot better than he did through his first 6 games. Because I agree with the commenter, though, about yesterday. If McCarthy had a bunch of games with no turnovers and 160 yards, they do probably win 3 or 4 more of these. And if he had stayed healthy through that whole time, they probably do beat a Pittsburgh with that, if this defense had been healthy at that time, or the offensive line. So
you can't win with 30 snaps a game.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever they were pulling in on.
Right. So I think it's fair. I think that's what's fair. But I also said to you last week, If they go 5-12 or 4-13 and they lose by 30 to the Packers the last day of the season, I can't defend anybody.
Yeah, and so that means the stakes are high in a lot of ways for these 4 games. The stakes are high for the decision makers. The stakes are high kind of certainly for McCarthy, but I think, the fan base too. Look, they're not going to not sell out next year. We know that. I mean, the hook's in too deep. It's the NFL. But you don't want an angry, ornery fan base blasting people all day long on social media. And the only way to take a fire hose to that is to win. It really is. So if they can massage some wins and massage some good optics and some confidence, everybody's going to feel better going into the offseason. Not great, very disappointed, because look, we all, life isn't guaranteed. This was another 9 months of our lives, or 12 if you want to consider the offseason, of thinking we had one thing to look forward to and comment on and analyze and pick apart, and being handed a rotting pile of this and being told, hey, this is still the NFL. And I just don't feel like, I just feel like there was a bait and switch. Means like they knew that they were selling us a lemon, but I just feel like we've been cheated a bit, because this was not what you had. A Cadillac, it had a few dings on it in January, and Sam Darnold, you decided to get rid of it for a shinier Cadillac that you actually built. But none of the belts work. The transmission's shoddy, and it only has 3 tires. But hey, we built this and it looks great. That's kind of what I felt like this season was a bit. So I think the NFL is a humbling league. It'll humble everybody: players, coaches, managers, fans, media. It's a humbling enterprise. And I think KOC and Kwesi have gotten a big helping of that. And they realize, you can't be a successful coach in this league without dealing with adversity and hardship and working your way through it. It's not just talking about it and grinding through it. It's improving on the other side. And when you think of all those golden horseshoes that rained on this team in 2022, it just, and then Darnold becoming Sam Darnold, what everyone thought he would be when he was drafted, kind of magically before your eyes. Those were things that most NFL coaches don't get in a career. KOC's had those 2 great occurrences, and he still doesn't have a playoff win. So he's learning about the seedy underbelly and the undercarriage of judgment and scrutiny, and it doesn't take long for the screws to turn. And I think he's probably going to be a better head coach because of this. I think you could just tell by his prickliness. Look, if you're losing the way they are, you don't expect coaches to be tossing bouquets in the press conferences, but you could sense that the walls were closing in. So how's he going to grow from this? How's he going to be able to build upon that over these 4 games, work with McCarthy through a full off season again, and have a lighter schedule to go? It's relentless, the expectations in this league, but I think McCarthy would be a better coach for it. And Kwesi, he knows he's on the clock. He's sharp.
Yeah, I guess for me, and nobody has to remind me that other draft picks have gone wrong. Trust me, I've had it mentioned to me a few times by the comment section. I also do want to point out that I'm not so sure that Brian Flores is really a big development guy when it comes to some of these draft picks. I'm not saying that they've turned into megastars elsewhere, but they really have not stuck with young players on the defensive side. They came in and they moved on from everybody really quickly. They also spent a lot of their draft picks to win now on other guys. They trade a draft pick to get Jordan Mason. They trade one for Hawkinson. They trade one for Cam Robinson. They trade one. They have essentially traded their draft picks by signing all these players. They lose comp picks when Eric Wilson becomes a great player. That's just the price to pay, that they've made that sacrifice. And I'm not saying that they've made great moves across the board, and every pick's been wonderful, and every single player has been magical except for JJ McCarthy. That is not what I'm saying. I mean, there's some contracts. Aaron Jones was great yesterday. The overall, is that contract a great idea? Probably not. Byron Murphy Jr., who I think is better than what we've seen this year, has not lived up to that contract. Dalton Reisner, I think, played just as well as Will Fries has played. Maybe they would fight me on that, but the data points to that. Like, Dalton Reisner was a plus pass blocker, which has been Will Fries, and not a difference maker in the run. And that's kind of been Will Fries too. Only they paid way more for it than with Dalton Reisner. Although, can I quickly mention, just real quick, for all the folks who were like, they got rid of Ed Ingram and now he's great. He is now 54th out of 60 in pass blocking after yesterday's game against the Chiefs. So I don't think a lot actually changed there. But the point just being that, they did a lot of suboptimal things, including moving on from a quarterback who had one of the best seasons in franchise history, which I think is a suboptimal thing to do because it's so important. And they wasted a year. And when you do that, you end up on the hot seat. Like, it wasn't shocking to me to see that article to say somebody might get cooked by this season, because that's what happens in the NFL. I just think, in my opinion, like, let's be bigger picture about this and have the quarterback get 2 years. Because think about where Chicago was last year. They were in such a bad spot with their coach that they had to do it. I don't think that this is in a bad spot, so bad with either spot, where you have to do this because the organization is melting from the inside. Like, that's how it felt with Rick and Zim. There's so much dysfunction. You just have to make a change. I don't feel like that's the case. As of right now, talk to me after week 18. I wanted to ask you, Murph, about yesterday and the other games that we saw before we wrap up. Incredible game in Buffalo. I wish I was there. That was magic in the snow globe between Burrow and Josh Allen. The Los Angeles Rams just put a complete ass whooping on the call them the Phoenix Cardinals until they do something. The Phoenix Cardinals. But the game of the day for me, Chicago and Green Bay, just two teams bludgeoning each other. Oh man, yeah. that was so good. What did you think of that game, Murph?
I only was able to read about it. I saw a couple of highlights. Because I had to do something after our game, but I love the fact we talked about this in the offseason too. Would the division flip? Would it become more of a Green Bay Chicago division than Detroit and Minnesota? I'm not willing to hand these guys everything yet, but the way that they play, the way the coaches dislike each other, the way, Minnesota and Green Bay have always had a big rivalry. But the Bears-Packers rivalry is right there. It's a 1A, 1B in this division. And I just feel like it feels good when the Bears and the Packers don't like each other. And there's been some funny things that, they both play outdoors. They both play in messes. They both have these hard-nosed reputations. I love the fact that now there's a coaching rivalry. And we have them here and there, but it feels like these guys genuinely don't like each other. Obviously, there's been comments made that kind of precipitated that, when Ben Johnson says, "Hey, I love beating Matt LaFleur twice a year." You don't think that's going to get back to LaFleur? I just feel like it's kind of a grudge match now. And, the Lions may be there in the end. The Vikings are resetting. But this could be a Green Bay, Chicago, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, Matt LaFleur kind of, San Francisco, Dallas type. That's kind of where the vibes are. There needs to be NFC Championship games to really build upon that. But it just feels like there's a good old hate brewing. And when you have a game like yesterday that comes down to big plays at big moments, but also mistakes at key moments and comebacks and uncertainty and controversial officiating or whatever, it's a beautiful thing to watch. And I just feel like these teams, if these two teams meet in the playoffs, it might be the bloodiest game of the playoffs.
It just, it made me a little sad to not be covering it. You know, what one of our good friends, Courtney Cronin, covers the Chicago Bears, and I was like, man,
She suffered a lot to get here, though.
she did. Oh, she went through some horrific seasons covering that team. But I thought, man, I wish I was at Lambeau today. Like that would have been a good one to cover and talk to people after, break down a million different ways and all those things. And I also think that it shows how far Chicago has come, that they are one complete pass in the end zone. If Caleb Williams gets it out a little earlier, puts a little more air underneath it, that touchdown was there to be had. He just didn't put enough gas on it. They were right there. Maybe if it scrambles, he gets 1 yard, it's a first down. I don't know. But that Chicago team has come a long way from being kind of fraudulent, which I thought they were early in the season, but they look like they're getting stronger, and their offensive line is really something. They were running the ball. I still don't think that Ben Johnson fully trusts Caleb Williams. You can see that in some of the play calling, but when it comes to how they've run the football, it's been really miraculous how they create wide open wide receivers, yards after catch. Like Ben Johnson has been the real deal this year, as he was in Detroit. And, last year going in
twofold. I think he wounded Detroit by leaving.
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely true. That is absolutely true. Last year, it felt like this with Minnesota and Detroit. Like their first game was super close. It came down to one play. And then, obviously week 18 went the way it did, but going into week 18, like how excited were we for that? Like the coaching matchups here, the battles with these teams, how good all of them are, even going into next year, now that we know Ben Johnson is very legit as a head coach. I mean, that's just spectacular theater, but it also raises the bar that much higher for how good the Vikings team and JJ McCarthy and KOC and everybody needs to be, because this is who you're dealing with, is a Chicago team that's going to improve and a Green Bay team that, like, the Jordan Love discussion's over. The Jordan Love discussion's over. He's a great quarterback. Is he the best quarterback of all freaking time? No, but he is a great quarterback. And Green Bay has their guy. He's played through a lot of stuff this year with injuries on their O-line, receivers getting hurt in and out of the lineup, his best tight end getting hurt, and he continues to play.
Getting hurt. He's been banged up.
Right. He is PFF's second highest graded quarterback this year. He's just been spectacular. So that's what you're dealing with. If you're the Vikings, you are dealing with top-notch quarterbacks at Jared Goff and Jordan Love, some of the best in the league, and then a budding offense in Chicago that seems to be continually getting better, and a roster that can improve. It is not going to be an easy 2026, even if you have a easier schedule. So let me give you some FanDuel odds here, Murph. The Los Angeles Rams continue to be the Super Bowl favorites at plus 430. Green Bay at plus 750 is next. Then Seattle plus 800, Buffalo at plus 850. And then we've got some other teams mixed in: Denver, Eagles, Patriots, the Houston Texans, after taking down the Kansas City Chiefs, are all of a sudden plus 1,600 on FanDuel. They are in this conversation, Murph. What do we make of this? I mean, Kansas City is not completely dead. Indianapolis is going to have to start Brett Rippon and possibly Phillip Rivers, which I sound like I'm kidding, but I'm not. Like, that is
pretty close.
that is a joke that I would make. Like, oh, they need to bring back Phillip Rivers. I assume you saw that today, right, Murph?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, but like, what? That's where they're at right now. I think, Murph, that this season, and this is why I feel like I'm like a meme looking out of a window, like at the rest of the NFL. This season has been spectacular. Just the drama, the shocking results that we've seen from KC, from Baltimore, new teams emerging, quarterbacks emerging, coaches emerging, and so much parity that I don't know what's going to happen. It's hard to talk me off of the Los Angeles Rams, though.
I love Buffalo. I know you love Buffalo. Yep. I know the country loves Buffalo.
Yep.
Watching Josh Allen just do what he does and take over a game and just nonchalantly run 45 yards for a touchdown says to me, this is a guy that can get it done no matter how poor their defense is, no matter how poor their running game is. Josh Allen with the ball in his hand is going to make things happen. So I'm the Rams in the NFC. I'm not budging off of them until somebody can show me why. I still like the idea of Buffalo getting to the Super Bowl. I like the idea that they're probably going to have to go on the road, and they're battle tested. I mean, they are ready for this. They don't have the best roster they've had in recent years. Their receiving core is non-existent, but Josh Allen is a MVP and a Superman. And the only person I've been able to say that about really has been Mahomes in the last couple of years. So Mahomes, I think, clearly they've run out of gas in Kansas City. It's been a hell of a run. 7 straight AFC championship games and 10 years of dominance, but they're in serious need of a reset. I think they're just battered and just unable to drag it across the finish line. They had all those one-score victories last year like the Vikings did in 2022. That's a game of roulette you cannot win every season. Don't sleep on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Out of nowhere, they are now rocketing up. Oh, I think, are they 8-4, 9-4 now?
9-4.
I mean,
and Trevor Lawrence has been great. Trevor Lawrence has been great recently.
The AFC South, which we, made fun of for so long. Granted, Indianapolis, I don't know what to make of them now with Jones being out, but with Houston coming on, they don't look like a team you want to play right now. I just feel like there's, as you mentioned, the parity. The NFL has mastered the parity formula and the algorithms with the schedule and the drafting and the compensations and the television matchups and the rookie contract. Everything is predicated on making everybody feel like they can go to the Super Bowl. And as soon as they don't, they start thinking about next year going to the Super Bowl. And it's this nonstop cycle. But the way that they have been able to get these close games, one-score games, blocked field goals, ruining games, major magic kind of plays you've never seen before. They feel like they're erupting every week now, as opposed to maybe 1 or 2 a year. And it's why it's the greatest unscripted entertainment on the planet. And as we always say in May, Coller, it's why they play the games.
It's why they play the games, Murph. The highest graded teams by PFF in the NFL are the Rams and Seahawks, with surprisingly Detroit, but they've lost, a lot of close games.
No one in the secondary.
And a lot of injuries, but then Green Bay and a team we haven't talked about a lot that's 11-2, the New England Patriots. They're going to play Buffalo this week. The schedule, have you looked at the schedule of games this week, Murph? Holy cow. It's spectacular drama.
I was almost thinking the Vikings would get flexed out of Sunday night, except it's Dallas, and Dallas could play a AAA team, and they'd leave them in that slot.
They still could, I think, by tomorrow, but I don't think they will. But Buffalo is at New England. That's going to be really something to see. We've got Detroit at Los Angeles, and then Green Bay playing at Denver, and the Colts, with who knows who at quarterback, are now a 14-point underdog to Seattle. But there's a lot of good stuff. There's some very serious games going on this week, and a lot of teams that could potentially win the Super Bowl. Cannot wait to see how this plays out in the rest of the league. And at least here, Murph, as you said, the politics are now the story inside TCO Performance Center.
Politics and optics.
How much can JJ McCarthy continue to play like he did yesterday? How can that make everyone look by the end of the year and feel? And what are we going to be talking about in Week 18? Like, that's really the discussion that we're having now in Minnesota, unfortunately, but that's where we're at. So Murph, great stuff. Manny will be back on Thursday night, and then next week, as always. You are headed to Dallas to cover the game, so we'll be able to get the on-the-scene analysis from you with your annual trip, which will be very fun for next week. So we will see you then. Great stuff, Murph. Football. And thanks, everybody, as always, for watching/listening. And if you get a chance, go check out the newsletter, purpleinsider.football, for my film breakdown tomorrow on JJ McCarthy's game. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you then.